Recording. All right. For those of you who are here, welcome to another one of our Darkroom Booth 3 Zoom trainings. Today we are going to discuss Darkroom Booth for iPad, and leading the training again today is Wally from Darkroom Booth Software. I'm just going to turn it over to you to get started, Wally.
Hi, everybody. How's everybody going? Before we get too far into it, I see we've already got a question up there. Perspective on events from paper orders, software orders, or calls for help. I'm sorry, Ted, I don't completely understand the
I think
question.
he's asking if you have any idea of whether events are starting to pick up based on the numbers of inquiries that you're getting for assistance with setting up events, or
Oh,
bringing
yeah.
orders, or
The answer is absolutely. Our number of support calls, especially for reactivation from people who have just let their booth sit idle for months, have dramatically increased. Sales of software, new software, and upgrades have also increased. Surprisingly enough, sales in our other software products, not booth related, like Darkroom Pro, have dramatically increased. The cruise industry, that's a large user of our Pro software, has just in the last month dramatically increased their purchases. So we're still not where we were a year ago, but we're closing on it pretty rapidly. So yeah, definitely things are picking up and building steam.
that's
So
good to hear.
yeah, it's great to hear for everybody,
Yep.
because obviously if y'all aren't working, then you don't need what we sell. So we want y'all to get back to work as soon as you can.
Yeah.
But today is about iPad booth, and just a little background. I kind of gave this little overview at PBX, and my personal opinion, we purchased the rights to the software and the code from another developer, the original software, and we did that on let's see, it's been about a year and a half ago. And the background story is his name is Owen, and he had a company called Hula. And we haven't tried to keep this a secret or anything, because I think that's kind of silly. It's going to get out. I might as well tell you the truth from the start, so you hear it from the start. But Owen did a great job doing iPad in his kind of its spare time. He actually owns a development company and does a lot of software development for custom applications for corporate work. The auto industry, I think, is one of his biggest customers. But in his spare time, he got married a few years ago and decided he wanted to kind of put together a photo booth application. And so that's where he started with Hula Booth. But it got to the point where he didn't have the support staff, he didn't have the sales staff, just didn't have the wherewithal to kind of keep it going. So he reached a point where he was either going to have to just shelve it and discontinue it, or he was going to sell it to someone else. And so we got to talking, and we worked out a deal, and we bought the code from him, but retained him to continue working on it. So this thing you see now that is Darkroom Booth for iPad has been changed in a lot of ways, a lot of new features added, a lot of new things added to it from the original Hula Booth. But it started out with Owen, and Owen is still doing all of that development, him and his team. He's not Owen has a team of people that he works with, not just him by himself. And he's been great to work with. Owen has a lot of great ideas. And when you couple that with, our experience and what we've done and everything with Darkroom Booth for Windows, I think we've got together and put together a really good product. Now, I'll be the first to tell you that Darkroom Booth for iPad doesn't have every feature in the world. It is not a mature product, in my opinion. And by mature, what I mean by that is we have a lot of things that we want to continue adding to this software. So it's not by any means end of the life as far as that goes. But we are continuing to add things to that as development time and everything is available. COVID really kind of put a dampener on a lot of development for a lot of folks. So we are still doing that. And we released a version last week with a couple of new features, and I'll kind of go over some of those things. Did anybody have any questions about that before we go right to the software? Is anybody currently using Darkroom Booth for iPad? Terrence? Anybody else? Okay. I think honestly, because we don't have every feature known to man, and we did come late to the party, we've put Darkroom Booth for iPad at a price point that makes it very advantageous. It is $29.95 a month for a subscription. If you pay by the month, you get a discount of about $60 a year if you pay for a full year at once. And that $29.95 per month is unlimited events. And it also allows you to use it on up to 10 iPads on a single Apple ID. So that comes down to like $3 a month if you're using it on all 10. And that's pretty cheap deal as far as iPad software goes. It has most all of the basic features. You can do still photos in single or multiple strips. You can do GIFs, and you can do burst mode GIFs as well. So any other questions or anything before we go right to the software? What do we got there, Terrence? Oh, you just...
There's Darkroom installed on the iPad.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, so let's switch over to my screen so you can see my screen. And can everybody see my screen?
No. Still
Nope.
see you.
Still see me. Well, what did I do wrong? Share screen. Screen. How about that?
Oh,
Now
try
can
now,
you,
Wally.
now can you see it?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, I had a setting change or a setting incorrect.
Okay. All right. So this is the Darkroom Booth for iPad. And when you run the application, it comes to this screen right here. And I just want to kind of spend a couple of minutes going over some basic layouts of where things are in the screen, and then we'll talk about how to set up an event. Across the top row up here, now I'm using, just because you can't see my hand touching the screen, I'm using a mouse. So that's what that round item you see there on the screen is. That's my mouse pointer. And that lets you see where I would be touching. So if you go up here in the top right corner, there's three icons. The first one is the screen that we're on right now. The second one is the default or the main setup screen. If you're a Windows user, the global settings section. And then over on the right-hand side, we have a help icon. If you click on the help icon, it takes you right to our help system where you can get help. You can also click here to email support, go to the Facebook group, whatever you want to do there. Let's go back to the main settings section. So this is the main settings. If you start up here at the top, you'll see here, this is where you would click to manage your subscription. And then under general, you'll see that you can set a timeout, and there'll be other things added to this eventually, but right now just the auto timeout. Now, what that timeout does is if you have it set up to where you send email or text or something, that's how long it'll sit on that screen before it goes back to the start of the session. If you have it turned off, it'll sit there forever until someone clicks, done and goes back to the start for another session. Or you can set the time here for whatever time you would like for that to expire. I usually like to keep that 30 to 45 seconds. You want it long enough so the person at the end of the session doesn't go, oh, wait a minute, it disappeared real quick. But then again, you also don't want it so long that people are just sitting there waiting forever for it to cycle back. So that's the auto timeout. Now, these settings coming up, like this one right here, this is identical to what the settings look like in each one of the regular session setups, the event setups. But this is the default. When you set this up here, so if you know that every time you decide to set up a new event, you want to start with a 2x6 photo strip, then you can set that up here and set up all your defaults so that when you start a new event, then it starts with those things. That way you don't have to recreate the wheel every time. You can set up whatever you like to have for your default. And then the same thing applies here for GIF. You can set up GIFs and set up their defaults. I'll go more on each individual setting here in just a few minutes when we get to the individual events. But if you wanted to have your default event to include a GIF, you just turn that on and set up the things you want for that GIF. The same thing with burst. You can set that up there. So you just turn that on, and then every time you start a new event, it would already have it set up for a burst with the settings that you have set there. Now, next, you'll see saving. So what saving does is this is how you save images. So you can set, things to save to the camera roll. That's on your iPad locally. You can save different things. Now, the first one is MP4s. That would be for GIFs or burst modes. Raw images would be the straight out of the camera images that are not including any borders or anything. Output images to the camera roll and the overlay images. Those are also the finished product that have your border on it. And those are things that you would save to the camera roll. So you can set that up there so that every time you start a new event, it has those settings. Now down below that, you also have the option of Dropbox or OneDrive. And if you select, like for instance, I've got Dropbox already linked, and then you can turn on those same things, MP4s, etc., to save those to a Dropbox account if you have internet access, and then you can set that up as well. Now, the next item on our list over here is Event Gallery. This is where you would set up your Event Gallery account. So in your Event Gallery account, you get the API key from that application, and you copy it and paste it here. And then you can click, send as a test, and it'll tell you if it actually makes the connection and works. That's a set it up once and forget it. Unless you intentionally change the API for some reason, then that's a set it up one time right there. That would link your Event Gallery account so that any event could get posted. Below that, we have sharing. Now, here's where you would set up your email sharing. Now, by default, Darkroom Booth for iPad has a built-in application or server for email, so that when you set it up, you don't have to put in your Gmail account or anything like that. You can if you want to. If you want to use your own account, you can, but it will still send emails without doing that. And so you can turn it on. You can put the name that you'd like the emails to appear to come from. That would probably be your own company name. And whatever email address, if they happen to reply to that email with a question or something, you'd want to put in your email address to reply to. Now, if you decide you wanted to use your own email account, you can click right here and put in your own email information to go there. So down a little further, you've got the option of plain text or HTML if you want to send your emails fancier than just normal text. You just click on plain text and you can put in whatever text you want it to. In this case, it says, here's your photo. HTML, you can copy and paste HTML in. So then a little bit further down, you'll see where you set up, enable SMS sharing. That's Twilio. Or it also supports MessageBird, which is more common in the UK and Europe. But you can set that up there, and all the various things involved in setting that up as far as that goes. At the very bottom, you have Airdrop sharing. Airdrop is a great option for people who have iPhones because they can transfer the image directly from the iPad to their iPhone, just like a normal AirDrop, without having to have internet or any other access like that. It's just a direct from the iPad to their phone. So you don't have to worry about having internet in that situation. Any questions so far? Not going too fast or anything? Okay. So far, so good. At the very bottom, the AirDrop, I started to tell about that. You just turn it on and it shows up. So at the very bottom over here under Design, this is where you have the opportunity to change various aspects of your look of the way the photo booth works. At the top, these are all the defaults for color of text and things. You can change those however you want to do that. You can also select an image that you want to show up there. So if you want to have your own, application logo, your own company logo show up on the screen, you can put that there. You can also add it to a background screen. So for example, if you enable a track screen, you can choose here and put a still photo, a video, the different options there so that you have an attract photo. And then also there's a background image for your camera and then a background image for the share screen. I'll explain a little bit more about that in just a minute. Then further down here is all the various text that people would see. So, when you're ready, touch here, put in your email address, all those kind of things. You can change those any way you'd like there. So those are all the standard setups where you set up your accounts and you set up your standard settings that you would like each event to start with. Any questions about all of that? Nope. Okay. Let me go on over here and go back to this screen, and we're going to just kind of step through creating an event from scratch, and I'll show you how I did that particular event. So in this line right here, if you had multiple events, you'd just see multiple lines down through here. And you can click up here on this event list word, and you can archive events, save those off, and also pull up your event list. Now, in the event list itself, if you click on the name of the event, then it'll take you to this screen right here where you can see details about the event, how many photo sessions were done, etc. You can click here to edit the entire event. We'll show you that in just a minute. You can click here to export the event settings. This is where you would export those and save those to a file that you can import on another iPad. So you could set up multiple events on this iPad, transfer them to a different iPad to actually use. And then you can also export the event data. Event data would be things like email addresses and the text, the numbers that are text to, those kind of things where you can market to those later. Any questions about all of that? That's the details about the event. I'm going to go back to the event now. Now over on the right-hand side, you'll see these 4 buttons where you can set up your event. At the top, you see load event and create event. So if you're going to create an event on this iPad from scratch, then you would click that button. We'll talk about that in a little bit more in a minute. Load event is if you created another event on a different iPad and you want to load it into this one. So you can click on that. It would pull up, here I've created, the way I like to do it is I created a Dropbox folder called iPad Resources. And in iPad Resources, I have all the different folders that make up various templates and overlays and so on there. And so then I can create those things on my desktop computer, save them to the Dropbox, and then open them right here on the iPad for import. But if you wanted to import a specific event that was created somewhere else, you would just select the file. Let's just choose that one. Click OK, and see there, that brought my event in. So let's go back up to this one right here, Katie and Dalton, and I'm going to show you how I set that up. So first of all, when you create a new event, it asks you for the name of the event and the event date. Now, this would be the date that it actually happens. So if you're setting it up, a week or two or a day or two before, you would put the date of the actual event. If you're doing an event gallery, these 2 things would be what the event gallery posting would be going to, the name and the date. If you were going to do multiple iPads all posting to the same event gallery, you'd want to make sure that information was the same. All right, next. The first item is still images. So you can choose between the front camera and the back camera. Most people with a photo booth, they want to use the front camera so they can see the live view and everything. But you can also use the back camera. then here we have the number of seconds. That's your countdown, 4, 3, 2, 1. Then you choose the layout that you're going to do. Now this is a new addition here. We added 2 new layouts, just released this last week. We added 2 new layouts for better compatibility with AirPrint devices like the AirCanav and the DNP. Those are these 2 down here, and it's basically 2 2x6s side by side. It's sent to the printer as a 4x6, and the printer cuts it. Then you've got these others. So if you did a square image, a rectangle, a full-size 4x6, any of these you can add an overlay on, and I'll show you that in just a minute, or you can do a 2x6, whatever. In this particular, I think this is the one that I had it all set up for. So you can see down here, you select your layout, and then you select the template you want to add to it. And let me find my template. Let's see, maybe I didn't have that one in there. Anyway, so there's the layout that I chose to use. It's a 3-photo horizontal 4x6. Okay, and so that's how that's all set up. Now then, when you click next, it goes to the next item. And if you're going to offer a GIF, then you would just select a GIF. And in this case, you just use a single photo. Let's do with a square, okay? And boomerang, of course, means it goes forward and reverse. So if you wanted to do that, you would choose the boomerang. And then you've got short delay, playback speed, etc. Those are things that change the way the actual final result looks. So you can play with that a little bit if you want to, see whatever your preferred way of doing that is. Then you've also got the option of doing a logo. That would just be a logo over the corner of the photo, and you can choose what corner it's in here, or you can choose an overlay where it goes all the way around the photo. And then that's where you would select here. So you can choose this, and let's pick a, let me see here. I'll choose one real quick. Here's one. Okay, choose image, overlay, enable animated overlay if you wanted to have multiple files changing on there as well. Display during shooting, mirror, that's if you want it to be read correctly or not correctly. That's up to you, personal preference. Then you see a preview down here of what the final result would look like. Okay. Now, in this particular example, I'm not going to do a GIF. I'm just going to go right over to the burst. So here's how you'd set up a burst. Now, the big difference between a regular GIF and a burst is the regular GIF is taking 3 or 4 photos spaced, you know, several seconds apart. Okay, here's photo 1, here's photo 2, photo 3, etc. With the burst, it's taking as many as 15 photos really, really fast, almost like a video. So it just gives you a different effect. You can choose which one you prefer. So let's go down here. You have all the same options as far as choosing cameras and so on. Enable boomerang if you want. Then you've got your playback speed. In this case, we're going to take 10 shots. And then I'm going to set up an overlay that's animated so that you can see how that works. Now, in that case, you just choose each one of these. I'm going to remove that one so you can see how I'd add one. So in this case, you have the option of adding all these different overlays so that the overlay animates as well as the photo. So you just choose that. And then let's go to iPad resources. And then you would add in, you know, whatever logo or whatever overlay you have ready for that purpose. And let's see, I don't want to do that. So then after you get through setting up your overlays, and those are just different PNGs, each one of them is a slightly different PNG, and you'll see how that works in just a minute. So then we go to this section, and this is where you'd set up Event Gallery. You turn it on or off. You've already set up the account in the other section, and then you set what you want to save for this event. Again, you've already set those up in defaults. It starts with your default. Same thing here with your cloud storage, so Dropbox or OneDrive, and then what you plan to save to the cloud. Let's go to next. And then you turn on email sharing, the from name, etc. That's if you're using our built-in server account. And then also SMS sharing if you're planning on doing that and turning on enable AirDrop. So now that we've got that entire event saved. So I'm going to click right here on start. Now the first screen that comes up right here is what we call a pre-flight check or a pre-start check. It just kind of gives you a rundown of basic things and check boxes to let you know that they're all done. The first one is the battery. Now in this case, 26%. I should have charged this before I started, but we're doing okay. Then it tells you, you've got sufficient storage space on your iPad. Lets you know that Wi-Fi is connected and working. Lets you know your mobile data is working. And then also guided access. If you have iPads, Apple guided access turned on so people can't get out of the session, that you want to do that. And once you have all those satisfied, you can click Start Event. Now this next screen that comes up is just a little notification to let you know how to get out of the booth mode. We get a lot of calls from people saying it doesn't say how to get out of booth mode. Well, this is where it says it right here. And basically you just click in the top corner, this corner, down in this corner, and then over in this corner. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and that exits booth mode. So this is just a little warning screen. So let's start the event. So here is a static attract mode screen that I added in the design section, and it doesn't do anything except sit there and say that. You can also add a video, an MP4 video in 1920 by 1080 vertical format, and add that there if you want to have motion. And they can be up to, I've used videos as long as 4 or 5 minutes. There's no specific limit. It's just kind of up to you, but you can use a really long video if you want. And you can also add sound. So if you wanted to have, like a little instruction video, how to do it or something, you can do that. Now I'm going to touch the screen, and then it takes you to this screen right here. This is where you would choose what type of session you want to do. And in this case, I'm offering 2 different things: take a photo or make a burst GIF. If you also offered a standard GIF, then you'd have 3 options there. And just be 1, 2, 3. If you did just one type of session, it wouldn't stop on this screen. It would just go right into the session itself, so that you don't have a big delay. So let's do the take a photo first. All right, so here I am. Hi, that's me. So 1 and 4, 3, 2, 1, and then here's the last photo. And then it shows you the template right there. And then at the bottom, you'll see share via email, share via SMS, and share via AirDrop, and then done. This is the done button I was talking about for that auto, that setting where it would end the session after so many seconds. If you don't have that set, which I don't, it will sit right here until you press done. If you do have it set, then it would just expire and go back to the attract mode screen. So in this case, you can click on share via SMS. Someone can type in their phone number. It'll stay right here on the screen. Then you can click email, and you could type in email if you wanted to, and also AirDrop if you wanted to. And you just choose AirDrop, and it would show you whatever is available there. Once you're done with that session, then you can just click done, and then it goes right back to the beginning to start the next session over again. Any questions so far?
Nothing in the chat. We're going along pretty well.
Okay. Now to exit.
So Wally,
yeah.
Could you go back to the layouts
Okay.
that you had available?
Right here.
It's Clay, by the way.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. What about
All
them?
right. I was just seeing if there were any of mine from my store. So I haven't looked at the app in a while.
No graphics are included. We have
Right.
those. We have some free downloadable graphics and templates on our darkroomtemplates.com site that are free that you can download, but they're not directly included here.
Right. No, I was just looking to see if those are the ones I sent you when we released the app. So
basically, the 2 that we added are just 2 2x6s side by side, so it's the same layouts we already had, but just 2 of them side by side so that they'll be more compatible with AirKnob and DNP.
Okay.
AirDrop. Yeah,
Perfect.
AirPrint.
Perfect.
Any questions? Okay. Any other questions, anybody? It's a relatively simple application. Like I said, it doesn't, have a lot of some of the features that some other companies have, but at the same time, it's not near as expensive. You can outfit an army of iPads with our application for the price of one of the major competitors. So if you don't use all of the settings or all of the features that they offer, then you may consider our application to save you a lot of money. Now, I wanted to show you a couple of more things. Let's start with creating a brand new event. I'm just going to type a test here. So if you choose a single photo application and let's choose overlay and display during shooting, choose image. I'm going to choose a just a square overlay. Okay, now when you get that all done and everything, then you can come down here, and when you choose a single image, it doesn't work on the multiple images just because of cost and time. But when you choose a single image layout, you can also choose to use the green screen dropout. It's actually not, it doesn't require green screen. It drops out without green screen using remove.bg. Now, when I try to enable it now, I don't have remove.bg set up as an account, so it doesn't let me. But if you did have remove.bg set up as an account, then you could turn that on and choose your background image here. And remove.bg does require internet access, but it does a phenomenal job of dropping out backgrounds that don't require any green screen application.
And removebg.com or removebg, that requires a
it is a separate paid
account, or it's paid
yes.
for image, right?
Yes, that's you'd get your own remove.bg account. You can go to their website. It's remove.bg. If you want to take a look at that,
Yeah.
They have a variety of different plans to choose from. It ranges between, say, 15 cents and 18 cents an image, depending on which plan you choose.
Yep.
So that's something you can consider. We used it at Darkroom or at PBX, and just had it pointing out at the showroom floor, which was, a busy floor with people walking around, and it dropped out the backgrounds wonderfully every time. So it's a really good dropout. Anybody else got a question? You're awful quiet, folks.
If are you going to talk about printing?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of different ways to print from the iPad application. One of the easiest is using our hot folder application with a separate Windows computer. Hot folder is $99, one-time purchase, and it's very simple, very easy. It only has 2 or 3 settings, and you can actually plug the iPad in using the sync cable to the Windows computer that a hot folder is running on, and then we have built-in drivers for most of the same printers that we have for our Windows version. So if you're using, say, a DX 620, you just plug it in. We detect what printer you have plugged in, what media is in the printer, and set all the configuration for you. Then when you connect your iPad, we detect the iPad, and whatever you save to the camera roll would get printed. So when you're setting it all up in here, you would just set here to save, your output images to the camera roll. You probably wouldn't want to save your raw images, because if you're doing a burst GIF, it's going to save 15 raw images and print every one of them. But you just set it to save to the camera roll here, and then as soon as it's finished with the session, it sends it directly to the printer. So that's one of the simplest and easiest ways, but that does require a Windows computer. Now, it doesn't require a very powerful Windows computer. Pretty much anything running Windows will work. You can also use AirPrint.
Wally, can I stop you real quick before you go on to the next one?
Sure.
I just want to make sure that I heard something correctly. So you install Hot Folder onto the Windows computer, you plug the printer into the Windows computer, and Hot Folder is going to recognize the printer and set all the settings. It's going to recognize the printer and what paper you have in there, and it's going to do all the settings and everything for the printer.
That's correct.
For you?
Yes.
Okay.
Now you can override them if you want to or need to for some reason, but it's going to automatically set it up for whatever media is in there.
Okay.
Now,
That's
where
why
you
I'm
might,
sure I heard that right.
yeah, it's very simple. Now, where you might want to override the automatic settings, for example, let's say that you have 6x8 media in your 620, but you want to do two 2x6s. Well, if you have 6x8 media in there, we're going to default to doing 6x8s, but you could go in there and change it to two 2x6s. I mean,
Okay.
4x6s. So yeah, you can override it if you want to, but you can just plug it in and it work too. Now, also along with that, if you're choosing layouts right here, if you choose, let me go back one more. If you choose a single layout, like right here, a single 2x6, and you're using Hot Folder, we detect that you have 4x6 media and go ahead and print two 2x6s from that. So that's automatic. Now, again, you plug in the iPad as well, and we detect the iPad and just print anything that's saved to the camera roll. So that's,
in that case, then, if it's automatically printing and it's going to print two 2x6s, what happens if you need more than two? How do you print more than?
the Hot Folder application has a queue screen that looks very similar to the one in Booth, and you can see a thumbnail of each image, and you can choose and reprint more if you need more.
Gotcha. Thank
So
you.
you do that from the Hot Folder application. It just lets you scroll backwards and find the one you want and hit it and print it.
Okay.
Any other questions about Hot Folder? The other way you can print, if you go here and you enable AirDrop, then it comes up with AirDrop on the screen, and you'll see the AirPrint icon as well if you're using the DNP or the Airkanov, the DNP WCM, I think it's WCM, or the Airkanov. And those things, they work great because they are a Wi-Fi transfer. They take a little bit longer than the wired printing using the Hot Folder, but that's just because of the Wi-Fi nature of it. Terrence, are you doing any printing?
Generally, I only do printing with the DSLR, but I've been playing with the iPad and the WCM and doing wired printing with it.
Okay. Yeah. It's kind of funny. We didn't honestly put a lot of attention to printing with iPad application originally because our survey results and people we talked to and everything said that, no, if I'm using an iPad, I'm not printing. And then after we released it, then we were flooded with people saying, we want to be able to print, we want to be able to print. And so that's where we, put together Hot Folder and some other application options with AirPrint.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've been seeing, one of the reasons I was happy that we decided to do this particular training today was over the last week, I've seen a lot of discussion in the different groups about doing drop-off booths. And, I don't know of anybody that does a drop-off booth that allows printing because of the issues that could come up with the printer and whatnot, and so.
Yeah, back in the day, I have done that myself on a few occasions, let people do printing with a drop-off booth. I usually didn't go far, and I usually gave them my cell phone number.
Yeah.
And I made sure it had, a full roll of media before I left. I didn't start halfway through or anything. I didn't do it a lot, but the times that I did do it, everything, worked fine. I didn't really have any problems with it. But just the, you're adding an extra layer of complexity and everything when you go to printing. And people, I would bet I've had a few paper jams where people try to grab the print before it's finished and pull on it to get it out faster, and they cause a paper jam. And of course, then you have to clean all that and pull all that paper out. So I would think that might be the biggest potential issue, because I've had that happen with me standing right there looking at them and telling them not to touch it. And if there's nobody there, then you really have that possible option. Now, one way you could arrange, to keep that from happening is to put the printer somewhere, distant away, and then they have to walk over to get it, and by the time they walk over there, it's already finished printing. That might help that. But yeah, I could imagine that being a little bit more complicated if you're doing printing. But with the iPad booth, you can lock it out where they can't get out of it using the Apple guided access, and it just seems to work, and generally.
I actually had a problem on Saturday night because I was using a competitor's app where a 4-year-old came up and did something to the screen, had it on guided access, and completely crashed the app. And I had to delete it and reinstall the app.
Wow. I've never seen that before.
Yeah. So I don't know how they got out of guided access, because the button wasn't even close to being accessible at all. So trying to figure that one out.
Yeah. I mean, never underestimate the abilities of a 4-year-old, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear it was a competitor's app, though.
It was.
Well, is there a way to export an entire event in settings and email it or anything like that and load it in?
Yeah. Let me get out of here and I'll show you. I mentioned that earlier, but maybe I skipped over it kind of quickly. In this screen right here, if you click on the name of the event, you can come down to event settings and click on that, and then you can save it, wherever you want. Now, if you're using an iPad, the latest iPad, especially the iPad Pro that have the USB-C port, you can actually click Save to Files and save it to a thumb drive. You can also just save it to files on the iPad and email it to yourself. You can also just scroll over here to Dropbox and save it to a Dropbox location. That's what I prefer to do, because then I can create it on one iPad, save it to a Dropbox, open it on any other iPad on the account, and open it there. The only thing that does not save when you do the export events, it saves out your template, any templates or anything that are in use with the regular session, the burst session, gift sessions. The only thing it does not save is anything you've added here under the design section. So attract mode, those kind of things are not saved in that. Those are things that we have planned to include in that, but have not added that feature yet. So you'd need to add those things separately, but otherwise it saves everything else out to that.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason I still use a competitor's app is, white labeled events, right? And so, being able to send them all the settings and just load it in, right? Versus a cloud interface is at least a good short-term solution until I can have something more concrete.
Yeah, we did it this way, honestly, on purpose. I would be scared of a totally cloud-based interface, because you're depending on a server to always function to be able to set up your event. So if you're not familiar with how that works, to other people that are listening, the way a cloud-based works is you actually go onto a website, and put in your username and password and log in, and you set up your event and everything there on the website. And then that downloads to your iPad that's using that same username and password to run the event. The iPad application doesn't have any ability at all to create an event. It only can run the event that's created on the cloud. The problem there is if that server goes down, and it has for a couple of other competitors in times past, where you had a complete outage for anyone using their application. So no one could be able to, use it and set it up that weekend. That would scare me. And so we designed this to have kind of the best of both worlds. If you're using something like Dropbox or OneDrive, you can create it on one iPad, save it to those, and then open it on another iPad anywhere else and import all the settings and everything so that you can set those all up from one location. But then you're not dependent on the cloud. You can still set it up yourself locally on the iPad if you need to. Does that make sense?
I understand.
So,
all right,
Wally, what are the most requested features? What are the most requested things that iPad doesn't have now that people would like to see? And what do you kind of anticipate the things that'd be next to be added?
The single biggest one, I guess, it's kind of funny. We get lots of requests for this, but when I sit down and talk to people, they don't really know why. It's a lot of times it comes down to bullet lists. You're comparing, product A to product B to product C, and product A and B have these things in a list, but product C does not. And then you contact product C and say, hey, you don't do this? Oh, well, they do, but it's not something that anyone ever uses. But to answer your question more directly, the single biggest thing is virtual props. We get lots and lots of requests for virtual props, and that's something that we've sort of messed around with a little bit in development stage. Haven't added it to the software, quite honestly, because of COVID. When suddenly there's very little demand for your product, just like y'all, you don't go out and make large investments in development time. So we've had to kind of scale back on what we add and when until things pick up. That's just, this just being honest with you. So that's probably the single biggest thing. There's a lot of other things. Traditional green screen is one request, not just the virtual green screen, but there's a lot of other things that we've been, toying with ways to do things. And in many cases, it's improving existing features like the export event settings where it would export the individual designs. See, like right now, the attract mode screen is added here and it would apply to all events because you add it one time. So the next phase of that would be where you add that in the event itself. So each event could have a pre-set up attract mode screen of its own. And that's something that's, that we want to do. So that's another big request. So there's a lot of things like that are requested. Another thing is a lot of it is things behind the scenes that will just make usability better. But one of the things is I want to do an auto cloud sync where when you save an event, like I was talking about here, when you export the event settings and you save it, then it would just automatically sync that out without using Dropbox or anything to all of your other iPads on the same account. So then when you did that, they would just show up in this screen right here automatically. And so that's another feature that I want to add before too long, where they would just auto synchronize. So there's a lot of things like that I want to add, but that probably covers the biggest requested items.
And what types of requirements are there for the iPads that are necessary to run Booth for iPad?
It's honestly, the difference is going to be the camera more than anything. The iPad itself is not, this one that I'm using on is an iPad Pro, and so it's going to be one of the faster ones. But I've done similar tests on just a lowly 5-year-old iPad Air that works nearly as fast. So like, for example, if you go in here and you do this burst session, and so you see how quickly that popped up on screen?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's very, very fast. It might be a second or two slower on an iPad Air, so it's still just really fast. It's very, very fast as far as the code goes. The difference you're going to see between an older iPad and, say, an iPad Pro or something, traditionally or typically, is going to be in the camera. The front-facing camera is going to be better.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest area there. But it'll run on anything that runs iOS 11 or higher. What are you using it on, Terrence?
iPad Pro Gen 3 and the iPad Mini, I think, from last year. I don't think they've, like the iPad Mini 6. Both of them work perfectly fine.
Yeah, it's not very processor intensive, so that's where where you're going to see most of the difference is going to be in the front camera. And honestly, Apple didn't change the front camera. Most of the improvements they've made in cameras have been in the rear camera. So that's
the Mini. Maybe I have the Mini 5, but I think from the 4 to the 5, they upgraded to the 7-megapixel front camera. And then the iPad Gen 2 to 3, they added the Face ID, so you actually get that like depth sensor stuff, so it's actually better. The 3 to 2020 iPad Pro, there's almost no change in the camera, so I'm still recommending people buy the Gen 3 because it's cheaper right now, since it's not the latest one.
Yeah,
no real difference.
No difference in the camera, so yeah. So that's the big thing there. A couple other things that we've had requests for is some improvements in the manual exposure. I didn't even show you that. Let me get to that real quick. In this screen right here, if you go up here just under the camera and you triple click, then down here you have two options that come up. The first one, or the one over on the far right, is the exposure. Right now we're on automatic. You can click on manual and make adjustments. I'd like to make some improvements to that. Automatic actually works really well. And then the other thing that's listed there is the queue. So you can click here and you can see a running queue of what's been done and waiting to be sent out. If there's anything stuck in the queue as far as emails or whatever, you can see those here. Does that make sense?
Yep. Can you bring up the manual settings again real quick?
Yeah. Right there. So you can improve, change the ISO, the white balance, adjust RGB separately. I'd like to make some improvements in this area to do it more in a traditional shutter speed f-stop arrangement. And instead of listing the ISO or the white balance in RGB, have a single slider that would control and be more like a traditional camera where you have flash versus daylight versus tungsten, that sort of thing. So those are some improvements I'd like to make there.
Yeah, I was looking. The reason I asked you to pull it up, I've used one of the competitors while doing a white label for somebody, and one of the things that I found odd was that when you went into the manual settings, none of the settings were like in camera speak. You know what I mean? And it's like you're trying to figure out what the heck they mean, as a camera guy. And it's like, well, what am I doing here? What is this doing? It's there's no numbers or no letters or no words that are typical for a camera guy.
Yeah.
So what am I changing, and how is that impacting the quality of the photo that's coming out?
Right. Now, normally you could do this. You'd bring it up while the live view is up so
Yeah.
you can see what the changes are making.
Uh-huh.
The honest truth is doing the RGB on white balance separately is a little tedious versus a single slider, and that's the main thing I'd like to change.
Yep.
For the most part, the automatic works really well, and so probably most people that are using our iPad application don't even know you can make a manual adjustment,
Uh-huh.
but you can. So yeah, that's one area that I definitely want to improve before long. A couple other things is I want to add a dedicated AirPrint. Right now, you choose a button to print if you're using AirPrint. I want to add a dedicated AirPrint where it would just automatically send it to an AirPrint printer. I'd like to do a landscape mode. I've had some requests for that where the iPad is horizontal instead of vertical. Terrence, would that be something that would be of interest to you? It's kind of one of those things where some people, they want it and it's very important to them. Others don't care.
Would it be a tool I might use? Maybe. But again, I'm very strict about my product space where my iPads are my social boosts. If I'm doing printing, if I'm doing anything horizontal, if I'm doing any crazy, I'm busting out the Surface Pro and the DSLR.
Right.
Right. But that's just kind of my product space, and I don't tell the customer it's an iPad booth, right? I don't tell them it's a DSLR booth. I'm just like, here, you want no printing? Here's the iPad.
Right.
But that's my product space. So horizontal really doesn't matter to me.
Yeah. And that honestly is probably the better way to do it. Customers really don't care what brand of saw a carpenter uses as long as he cuts straight. And so that's kind of the same thing here. The last thing I would do before I had surgery would, grill the surgeon on what brand of scalpel he uses. I don't care as long as it's sharp and you do the job right. So that's kind of the same thing when it comes to, this. Most people, they don't understand Surface Pro versus iPad and all those other kind of things. They just don't. And so that's one of those things that's probably best.
And you can make both look awful, right? So it's not like one will take better photos than the other.
No, you can make both of them look awful. Now one thing that I want to add, and I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail because some of it's proprietary, but I'd love to be able to add, and it's technologically possible. There's a few hurdles and mostly just development time to overcome. But I'd love to be able to add the ability to use DSLRs with an iPad. And that's something that's technologically possible with some updates that some manufacturers have done in the camera world more recently. So that's something that, within the next 6 months to a year, we may be looking at doing.
Nice.
So,
well, it is 3:00 and I don't really have any place that I need to be right now, but does anybody have any other questions before we look to wrap things up? Or Wally, was there anything else that you wanted to talk about specifically that you didn't
I had one thing, and that was the animated overlays. Is that something that I missed?
Yeah. Let me jump out and I'll show you where those are. In this event here, I have one set up for the burst mode GIF. You can do it either with regular GIF or with burst mode GIF. So down here, you can add up to 15 overlays that just go in on top of they're just PNGs, and you just click and add and click and add and click and add. So in this case, you'd click there and you just add whichever PNG goes in the next one. And then once you do that, let me start a session and I'll show you what it looks like. So let's do a burst GIF. And so you see the leaves falling. And you can do that with regular GIF or with burst mode GIF. The big difference is burst mode GIF just has more frames, And you can also, on either one of them, do a boomerang, where it'll go backwards as well.
Okay.
That answer your question?
Yeah, it did. So you said 15. So on Photo Booth Graphics, on all of our animated overlays, there are 16.
You know, let's see. Remove an overlay. Yeah, 15.
Okay. So if I can make that a request to add a layer there.
I'll look into it and see.
Okay.
And you can also adjust, the playback speed and the number of shots, regular photos taken, and things like that. And you can turn it off where it doesn't. If you notice, I had it set where it would display while it was taking the pictures. You can turn that off here if you want to. So, any other questions? Anybody?
There's nothing in the chat box.
Terrence, anything?
I think I'm pretty good here. Yeah, I'm excited to see if we keep doing these over the next couple of weeks and what those topics are.
Next week, it's about slideshow in the Windows booth.
Yep.
And most people don't realize you can do some pretty crazy things with slideshow. You can get really elaborate, really creative. So we'll talk
Looking forward
about
to that
some of
one.
those.
This was very, very helpful for me. So thank you, Wally.
You're welcome.
One of the sessions I would like to see, especially with Christmas coming up, let's just say we do have the option for I'd like to see session over 4.
Okay, you dropped out. I couldn't understand what you were saying.
Yeah, you cut out.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. So what I was saying is, if we actually have Christmas pop up, and we actually are able to do Santa Claus sessions, I'd like to see a session over Core.
Oh, okay.
At some point.
Yeah. Darkroom Core and Darkroom Pro are probably one of the most popular Santa Claus photo systems in the country. And honestly, we've had a lot of people buying them for Santa Claus. So I think some of them are planning on doing virtual Santa Claus. Maybe I can show you how to do a virtual Santa Claus where you use a green screen. But yeah, we've had, quite a resurgence in Core and Pro sales recently for people specifically planning. One company, a really large company that's opening in mall locations around the country, and they've bought over 100 copies of both combined. So
yeah, I'd be interested in that session as well.
Just let me know when.
All right. Well, thank you again, Wally. Appreciate you taking the time to do it. And thank you everybody else for joining and continuing to join these sessions. Wally and I were talking a little bit before everybody jumped on. As some of you saw, I posted in the group that I was a little disappointed that we only had about 5 people register for this training today. And Wally is willing to continue to do sessions as long as he's available and as long as people are interested. And this whole thing kind of started from my desire to learn more. So, I'm happy that I get to continue to learn more and that people are still interested in it. And there's quite a few people that are watching the recordings of the sessions afterwards. So as long as we continue to have interest and we all continue to have time and this makes sense, we'll, continue to find good topics to bring forward to everybody and continue to do trainings. So thank you again, Wally, and thank you everybody else for joining in.
Everybody have a great day. See you next week.
All right.
See you now.
Bye.
Bye.